Okay, we'll go ahead and call this meeting to order. We have people on Zoom. No one on Zoom. We've got a full crew up here, so if you'd go ahead and stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Okay, moving on to item number 2, additions, deletions, or corrections to our agenda. Do we have any?
I have one thing that should probably be discussed and acted on. We became aware of a grant opportunity for more youth corps work. So maybe if you don't mind adding that, I have some documentation I could bring up on the screen. We could add it wherever you want, perhaps after item 9 before we go into reports, if that's okay. I got the dates kind of mixed up. I thought we'd have time on that other meeting, but the application itself is due the day before the next meeting.
I move that we accept the agenda with the addition that pursuing this grant.
For a new item 10.
After item
After
9.
item 9.
I second that.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. We approve the agenda with the addition of a new item number 10 right after number 9 for discussion about a new grant with Mile High Youth Corps. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay. Continuing on, item number 3, persons present not on the agenda. Do we have anyone who wishes to speak? If it transmits that far.
Good evening, trustees and fellow citizens. I'd like to share my concerns and ideas about the town pool. In the years leading up to the COVID shutdown, the town pool typically lost $10,000 to $14,000 each season. That seemed acceptable at the time, but the pool was also propped up with generous donations, thousands of dollars per year from private citizens. That's no longer the case. Last December, the last Board of Trustees approved an ill-advised, expensive contract with the USA Pool's contractor. Now my worst fears for the pool are realized. The town is saddled with a contract that's not worth the paper it's printed on. The taxpayers are guaranteed to lose over $30,000, and the pool's been open less than half the season we were promised. At last week's PRT advisory board meeting, the town manager mentioned she'd asked USA Pools for a portion of the money back. Becky was also in discussion with the Woodland Park Aquatics director about other options. And this is encouraging, but trustees, I hope you agree that this isn't enough. The pool is currently a community problem larger than one person's perspective. I ask you trustees to consider the following. 1, within 30 days, provide a trustee agenda item for a full accounting of the pool expenses this year, to include the pool costs spent on the USA Pool contractor, public works hours spent on the pool, materials for the operation and maintenance of the facility, and any other pool-related expenses. 2, your direction to grant authority to the PRT advisory board to be included in developing a get well plan for the pool. Their plan should consider What's the acceptable cost to our taxpayers having a town pool as an amenity? How can that cost be achieved? And if this isn't realistic, what other options might contribute to the long-term success of the pool? To summarize, please stop the town hemorrhaging money on the pool. Please get public works out of the pool business and fixing roads. Please allow our volunteer committees to bring their interest and expertise to help develop solutions. Green Mountain Falls will thrive or fail based on our volunteers. Involve them. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Do we have others?
Not that I see. We do have one Zoom participant. Any public comment?
No, not tonight, Nate. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else in the room?
Hi, can you hear me? Okay. Ann Esch, 6830 Colorado Street. I'd just like to say I'm really glad we're going to have a full planning commission. This is a wonderful thing. And also, as the planning commission is trying to adopt the land use code, we've been unsuccessful in getting a consultant to help us, even though that was probably a good idea. And I would like to suggest to the trustees that we use our own attorney with our town and expertise we have already. So, thank you.
Okay, are there any others? If not, we will move on to item number 4, our consent agenda, which includes our minutes from July 19th. If there's no changes to the minutes, I'd entertain a motion.
Mayor, I would like to just request that the entry on paragraph 8 reports, trustee reports, where it says trustee King comments that the Sunday concert series is very enjoyable. Although that is what I said, there was also an extensive comment on the head count. So I would just request that that sentence be stricken.
Do we have any other comments? If not, I'd entertain a motion.
Yes, I move to approve the consent agenda minutes of the Board of Trustee meeting as presented with the modifications suggested by Trustee King.
Okay.
Second that.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve the consent agenda as modified with Trustee King's comments. All in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? Okay, moving on to item number 5, Planning Commission recommendation for Raga Blasi appointment.
I had the memo switched a little bit here, but at the August 9th meeting, the Planning Commission voted unanimously to recommend the appointment of Rocco Blasi to the Planning Commission. The application is here and the applicant is in the audience. If there's any questions.
Trustees, do you have any questions? Comments? I would say I like the process they went through, especially when I had multiples.
Yes.
So if there's no additional questions or comments, I'll entertain a motion.
I would move to appoint Rocco Blasi as planning commissioner.
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded. We appoint Rocco Blasi as planning commissioner. Do we want to do the swearing in thing that was mentioned in our work session. Or maybe next time we go ahead and appoint now, but then do a formal swearing in.
If anybody is, the board would like everybody to take an oath of office for their appointments. So we will prepare those oaths for our next meeting, August 30th. That way it gives you time to let all your loved ones know.
Yeah, so we'd be actually appointing tonight. It would be effective tonight. It's just we'd go through a ceremony type thing next meeting.
So we'll vote right now.
It's been moved and seconded. We appoint Rocco Blasi as a planning commissioner. All in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? Moving on to item number 6, Fire Mitigation Advisory Committee recommendation for Paul Yingling.
So just a memo here from David Douglas, the chair of the Fire Mitigation Advisory Committee, which recommends that the Board of Trustees approve and appoint Paul Yingling to fill the vacant position for the Fire Mitigation Advisory Committee. And the FMAC voted unanimously.
Trustees, any questions, comments? And if not, I'll entertain a motion.
I move that we accept Paul Yingling's application as a member of the Fire Mitigation Advisory Committee.
I'll second that.
It's been moved and seconded that I'm going to modify a little bit. We actually appoint
Appoint.
Paul Yingling to the Fire Mitigation Committee. All in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? And the same would apply. We probably want to have them come through for the ceremony. Item number 7, Fire Mitigation Advisory Committee recommendations for nuisance tree definition.
This is just a memo again from David Douglas, the FMAC chair, and well, you were at the meeting, right? Maybe. Do you want to speak to this?
I might have had to jump off before this was discussed, but they have made a recommendation for the board's consideration when we do our next code update. So we'll begin a rolling list of items to clean up in the code, and with your approval, this will be one of those ones that we consider.
And I do want to comment on what I received back from the Forest Service, because there was another piece of this. We contacted State Forestry Service in Woodland Park. And I'm heavily paraphrasing. One of the responses is, as far as identifying the trees from the right of way, I think you are on the right track, and you can probably use 50% as a guide. If a tree's foliage is half dead, or the tree has been defoliated on half its limbs or more, there's a good chance it will die or be overtaken by other pests. And they say this will catch the trees that are fading throughout from Douglas, fir beetle or mountain pine beetle. And I can make that available if that email, if we need it. So trustees, any questions, comments?
I was just going to ask, as far as the process, do you want to add to this list that then becomes an ordinance essentially to modify code? You should probably look at the language here and suggest any changes at this point, so that staff has that clarity when compiling all the changes, in that ordinance, if that makes sense, or however you want.
So you're basically asking us, do we agree with what's been defined and maybe suggested in this email response to adding to a list for a periodic code update?
Well, yeah, whether or not the sentence in italics there, is that word for word what you would like to see? Or, are there modifications to that?
I think it's a good start, but it's out of context and we need to review it as a whole.
It sounds like we want to add dying.
Standing dead specifically in this case.
That's what this is, but it sounds like,
The dying definition would, we could borrow what.
so that would
Forest
be
Service-
in addition to this.
Yeah,
The dying would be 50%
yeah.
or more. That's how we would do it, right?
Is there any further discussion or comment? Anyone want to make the motion, or you want me to try to? Okay, I'll go ahead and try to, I'll move that we approve the concept of the statement with the addition of the dying from the 50% or dying from the Forest Service to be included in a periodic code update.
I'll second that.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve the concept of what is stated with the addition of the Forest Service statement for adding dead and dying trees to our definition of nuisance. All in favor? Say
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Item number 8, Parks, Recreation, Trails Advisory Committee recommendation for Creek Week 2022.
So this is just a memo from Jesse Stroop, Parks Rec and Trail Advisory Committee Chair. Basically, I think they're trying to organize this Creek Week cleanup event. And so I guess that's requested to have action on that to solidify that event and request volunteers. I will also comment that I received an email from one of the Fountain Creek, I believe from the Fountain Creek Watershed staff, and they wish to have a proclamation at one of the upcoming meetings, preferably in September, they said. So we'll just have to look at, I think there should be that first meeting is maybe not on, but there should be a meeting at least on the 20th then before this event. So that should work out timing wise.
Trustees, any questions, comments? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
I move to approve Creek Week for Green Mountain Falls on Sunday, September 25th, 2022.
I second that.
It's been moved and seconded to approve Creek Week in Green Mountain. Like, did I say it? Creek Week in Green Mountain Falls on Sunday, September 25th, 2022. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, moving on to item number 9, or discussion on Park Avenue road improvements.
Wonderful. We had discussed at a prior board meeting of the possibility of extending the road repairs up Park Avenue from the Stilling Basins project, just while we have equipment here. We did receive a proposal that was a little bit out of the ballpark. An alternate proposal was prepared, which would just utilize Class 6 road base. We kind of just evaluated options with the engineer and with staff as we are now receiving road base. We have gotten several loads of the lower grade material to be able to begin building back up some roads, as well as Class 6 coming in this week for those road repairs. It's just the opinion of staff that this is something that we can handle in-house.
Trustees, comments, questions?
I choked on that first figure for the quote there for paving. And I also couldn't help but think, I'd really like to see it all rolled into the master plan and, to make sure that it's properly engineered before spending any more money on it.
Yeah, and I'm absolutely not a fan of ripping up asphalt to put down road base. I think that might compound that problem in that area. And, it's one of those things where, yeah, the asphalt is definitely expensive, but, even though it's kind of cost prohibitive in certain regards, there may be strategic locations around town we may need to target and try to go after a capital improvement project.
Yeah, I'm not suggesting that we don't, that we rip up the pavement, but yeah, it doesn't look like any kind of cost savings, especially if, the repairs the immediate repairs can be done in-house. Doesn't make sense to spend that kind of money.
I would rather have it done right with a capital improvement project, just resurfacing that whole area.
Mm-hmm. And making
But
sure that
I'm kinda-
drainage is.
We can't handle the $153,000 just
No.
without a capital improvement project or grant. This is information only, so there's no action required on our part. Trustees, do you have any other questions or comments? If not, we'll move on to the new item 10 for the Maha Youth Corps. Grant.
Yeah, so this is a new grant opportunity from CJ Runge, who was the regional manager for Mile High Youth Corps. So she basically sent me this email letting us know of this grant opportunity. This is different than this co-swap grant that we're still working with right now. This is not a crew time opportunity without matching funds. This opportunity actually requires 10% matching funds. And let me bring up this document here. So there is some potential significant expense. It's a required minimum 10% match. As I said, there's different crew rates, as you can see here, which we would need the most, well, my thought initially, and we talked with CJ about this, is just continuing the work that they've been doing up along the Thomas Trail. It's just hard hand work. There's really no opportunity to get machinery up in there to make anything easier. So it's basically this $10,275 a week figure. So, 6 or 8 weeks of that adds up pretty quickly, even for the 10% portion. However, I did speak with both Chief Murphy and Gary, blanking on his last name, but the treasurer for the fire department. And he actually suggested that the fire department would be willing to help out potentially with this. And the grant does allow the funds to come from the applicant itself or other contributing project partners. So they were very positive. We had a lunch up there last week with the Mile High Youth Corps folks, and the fire staff was very positive about the project and want to see that type of work continue. So my thought was, we didn't talk specifics other than the general idea of sharing that cost, but even if we could split it or do something like that, that would be a really good opportunity to continue this work.
Do you have a maximum dollar amount the town could sustain?
I don't really at this time. I hadn't been able to analyze it in context to our budget.
with the savings from our lack of election process here, was that money absorbed anywhere else
Yes,
already? Right? I think all of it. So,
a large majority of it.
Okay.
On this particular project, if we were to look at, the scale of this project and what the cost for the crew time is, it's very similar to the cost of the Mile High Youth Corps because it's the same it's the same organization that we'd be partnered with. If we did 10 weeks with a 10% match, that ends up being about $12,000, $13,000 of a 10% match that the town would have to come up with. The town allocated around that amount for the cusp work that was done last year or this year, as well as I feel that, looking at a 10-week project is something that is very feasible, and it's something that could be worked into your 2023 budget. This would be a grant application for 2023, not for this current budget year.
So it's a continuation, but it's not.
Well,
Contiguous. It's not.
Well, I should say it doesn't have to be a continuation of the exact project. It could
Uh-huh.
be, they actually have a list of project ideas. It could be unrelated work in a park. It could be park refurbishing or anything like that. So it's not specific necessarily to fire mitigation, but we feel like we've developed a good working relationship with the Mile High Youth Corps and the project that they're working on. And the work has been a little more slow going than, hoped, but that's, not due to anyone's fault. It's just the hard work that it is. And so we just talked about that being the best, perhaps, path forward, especially considering Parks is likely to have a master plan specifically to the parks. So we wouldn't want to necessarily do work that would, before, that master plan is completed and we have more of a picture of that. So that's just the conversations that we've had so far. And so, yeah, here's the project list here as far as kind of a typical projects, but and they wouldn't necessarily have to do the exact same chainsawing work. We could have them come in after seeing, and doing restoration of wildlife habitat if that makes sense in that project zone. But really we thought it would be most simple and most effective just to continue the cutting that's been going on to this point.
Sounds like that would also be what the fire department is interested in. So, that's also something to consider, that we want to continue that work, especially if, we get some help with the matching.
Yeah, I really like this arrangement we have with Mile High Youth Corps. Our recent arrangements we've had with CUSP seem to have been more of a struggle than this one was. And I'm all for doing as much as we can.
So if you approve tonight, what the approval would be for is just to submit the application. It would commit no town funds for any future time. That would be something that we would do at a later date and as part of your budgeting process for 2023.
So Rocco seems like he had a question. Can we let him ask it real quick? Does it reference this?
Trustees. Yeah.
I'm just wondering what the
Yeah.
So Mile High is great. I'm just wondering what the Fire Mitigation Advisory Committee, what their recommendation is and what part of an overall larger plan this specific grant supports. Just so you have a coherent way ahead.
I think it obviously supports the goal to have a fuel break that continues around the town, meeting up with the CUSP work that's been going on the west side of the Thomas Trail. we could certainly bring it to the Fire Mitigation Advisory Committee. In fact, I had it in their packet last meeting, but I don't know if they talked about it. But it could go to them again before the deadline if the board wishes.
Yeah, I'd be
Well,
okay with voting on approving the grant, but sending it back for them to work the details.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much area in the plan that was put before us. I don't know how this could go outside of that plan. But yeah, we definitely want to move on the grant. Because it's the 19th. It's the deadline?
It's the 29th.
29th.
The submittal deadline. The 19th was to submit to Mile High Youth Corps if we wanted them to review or, you know, massage the application or in any way.
And this ends up being a different funding source than was used for the co-swap. This is actually a GoCo grant.
And it's for next year, correct? 2023.
Trustees, any further comments, questions? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
I'm moved that we take the steps to pursue this grant.
With coordination with fire mitigation.
I think we should go ahead and submit on the 19th, you know, the initial. I don't know why we would need to I mean, just for the grant, I don't think we have to identify this. Do I have to specify everything at this point for the grant?
I think that Nate can certainly reach out to the Fire Mitigation Advisory Committees for support in preparing any of the application materials that he needs. However, they did a pretty phenomenal job of preparing the first application. He didn't have a terrible amount of cleanup to do on it. And as long as, you know, I really what the intent of this project is and the way that that Nate and I were talking about doing this one is that because we can really just pirate a lot of that language out of the first grant application, it doesn't have to be reinvented.
Because in many ways, it's a continuation of the work that's already been being done.
And the first one actually used a prescription from the Colorado State Forest Service, and that forester has been involved throughout the project. I just met with him today, in fact, and walked the site. So, you know, he's had some small suggestions, but otherwise was impressed with the work that's been done to this point. Just confirmed this was on the Fire Mitigation Committee agenda last meeting, but I didn't receive any feedback or anything from the committee specifically, and I wasn't part of that meeting, so I'm not sure what the discussion was around it.
Yeah, I think I'd still like to see a little coordination done with fire mitigation on that, even just to make sure.
As long as it doesn't hold up the grant
Yeah.
application.
So I'll second the motion with that. So it's been moved and seconded. We approve basically going after this grant for fire mitigation. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Nate, were any of the suggestions annotated? Was it David Paletti with the prescription? Some improvements. He suggested some improvements.
Yeah, just some follow-up work that volunteers could perhaps do, or and some suggestions for the next 5 weeks, because we have another 5 weeks coming up. So just how the wood has been stacked so far. Change that, we're going to go back to the 30-inch logs on the ground. For those can be left essentially a slash on the site and not removed, and just kind of dispersing the slash in particular areas, just hot spots of thick slash that need to be spread out more evenly along the site.
So, okay, we're moving on to our trustee reports. And I'll start with Catherine this time.
Well, I can report on some activities from the Chamber of Commerce. Bronc Day was a good time. We were really blessed with a beautiful day from start to finish. And the committee's already met and, gotten feedback about what worked, what we'd like to change, add, whatever, bring back from past years. So it's been a really productive process. And the music series has just 2 more Sundays, just runs till the end of August. And we've only had 2 outdoor concerts due to weather, but it's so nice when weather permits to be out on the gazebo. And yeah, so yeah, we're really thankful to be able to share that.
I don't have anything.
Nick,
I don't have anything either.
Sunday. I'm glad to hear that we've got road base coming in and that we will, are we going to be able to adhere to one time we had a plan that went through zones. Are we going to be able to adhere to that?
In a perfect world, that would have begun at the beginning of the season. At this point in time, they are really working to get the most troublesome areas first, those areas that have begun to rut. Then with that, they'll begin to get back more into a zoned maintenance approach. In the meantime, they really are hitting those trouble areas.
Okay. There's quite a bit of activity, seems like, kind of going on with the PPACG and the PPRTA and the Pikes Peak Regional Building Department. Pikes Peak Regional Building Department actually has a new facility now up on the north side of the Springs. PPACG, there are infrastructure funds, and the state is pushing our area council of governments to try to hire individuals to help towns like Green Mountain Falls try to go after a lot of those infrastructure funds. And I've already sent a message to the guy who runs the PPACG, says, as soon as you get someone hired, let us know. And that's all I really have to report. Committee reports. Do we have any committee reports to go through? How about, okay, our staff reports.
So I'm not going to go through every single thing on here, just a couple of touch points on each of them. We did post an administrative assistant position. That is really just to get us caught up prior to our audit for 2021. There's just some data entry that we need to catch up on prior to that getting done. We do also have the deputy marshal position posted. Hoping to get some hits on that soon. On the Stilling Basins project, we did talk about that earlier. They did do the water changeovers today. We had about 75 customers in the area that were without water for a couple of hours. Want to thank CSU for getting those notifications out, as well as helping us get some signage on site, helping those that might not have visited their mailbox since that notification was out. We shouldn't expect any additional water outages as a result of this project unless something goes terribly awry, but everything's going quite well. We are scheduled for our next lowering of the water to tie the Stilling Basin in and complete the remainder of the Gazebo Lake project beginning August the 29th. So we do have about 2-week period where we can expect to have similar water levels to it, how it was last time, which is probably about, a half to 2/3 full. Beyond that, we had you will have another update or presentation, something new from Wilson and Company on your comprehensive roads plan, probably around September 20th is when they're anticipating. We talked about road base and public works. A couple of things on the plate here. The grant application for CPW was awarded. We did receive a PO. We are working to find the exact spot for that location to go. Did work with Dave Paletti and follow up on some recommendation on the trees that are there by the post office and looking at those. And also thanks to the PRT for their volunteering to assist with some concept designs for that. The plan there is that we will put together some designs for that enclosure that we'll be able to utilize when we go out to bid. So that'll mostly be the materials used to make sure that it conforms with the rest of the area and looks attractive. The pool. We learned a lot about the pool this year. Certainly there were some unanticipated expenses in getting it going, as it needed a little bit of maintenance after sitting empty. Staff will be preparing some alternatives for next year. We're crunching some numbers and have worked with or met with the city of Woodland Park. They seem to be agreeable that we could get some sort of an agreement put in place to train and certify the pool staff, the lifeguards specifically. That was one of my concerns of, if we were to take a different route next year, how do we accomplish that pool certification, not being able to do it in-house? And it seems as though they have the ability and the willingness to help us work through that. So we'll be looking at some alternative budgets and bring that before you before too long. The GoCo concept paper for your Parks, Rec, and Trails master plan was submitted. We should have notification tomorrow if we'll be invited to apply. If so, we'll have about a month's turnaround to put together an application for that. And I am confident that that would be a pretty strong application. The short-term rental meeting that we held, want to thank everybody that participated in that. And huge thanks to our co-facilitators, Reverend Darlene, thanks to Nate, and thanks to our marshal for helping get that put together. We are waiting on a draft policy for your review. We did have some of our legal staff who was out on illness, so we've pushed that timeline to the August 30 meeting. What our hopes are there is that if she has some sort of a draft policy put together for you, you all can review it, ensure that it incorporates the feedback that you've heard from citizens. And once you've had a chance to look at it, we recommend going ahead and posting that policy for a public review period prior to adoption. And then once that's adopted, we will go ahead and develop some procedures and that consider those policy changes and develop some additional supporting materials such as that house manual or a owner manager packet. So appreciate that. Other than that, the road base I did want to touch on, we will be working to create a little bit of a stockpile. The guys have made some space down there in the yard. So they are going to begin to, as the budget allows, stockpile some road base to where next spring we're starting off strong. Also would like to thank our fire department and Chief Murphy in particular for hosting the Last Supper for the Mile High Youth Corps, as well as for their willingness to bring that big old chipper into town and help us get going there. Oh, other than that, I do have a schedule out of office. I'll be out of the country from August the 31st until September the 11th. So just wanted to make you all aware of that so that if there's anything we need to take care of ahead of time, we can, but we'll meet before then again. Any questions for me?
On the dumpster blind, you mentioned PRTs, drafting that, should that be coordinated with, planning commission as well?
Well, what I think that we'll do, we've got lots of time to do that, to take care of that. Once we get some design elements put together, it'd be great to have the planning commission.
Yeah, because I'm thinking we need to get out with some public and, opportunity for public input, as far as the dumpster blinds.
Absolutely. And that I will have to look and see what is needed as far as a building permit as well. If it's going to end up needing any to be engineered to any snow load or wind loads and snow loads. So.
Okay. Trustees, any other questions, comments? Next.
All right, here's some updates for me. There's the co-swap fire mitigation stats, not final because we have total of 15 weeks. But here are the stats that they submitted to me for their work. As I said, David Pletty was pretty happy with the work. A few minor suggestions and tweaks that they will take into account for the next 5 weeks, and that will run from September 6th to October 6th. Audit, been doing some work on just verifying assets that we have for addition to the depreciation spreadsheet that we kind of the master spreadsheet that has been carried on over from year to year, and the audit has been rescheduled to next week. So hopefully we can get that behind us finally. Short-term rentals, approved one at 10860 Aura, and another one at 11414 Belvedere is actually, that has been approved as well. That approval date was Friday. So after those, we are at 50 out of 60 licenses that we know of. I do have, or that are officially licensed. I did confirm with the Munirevs that we have another interface that I was not even aware of, but it's a totally separate web interface, but it's called Lodging Revs. And that should be able to help us identify unlicensed rentals. I just need to do some training on it. I logged into it and it's not what you would call intuitive. So I'll be scheduling some time with the with our support person, and hopefully we can start identifying some of those. But once again, need a penalty to find for that so that we can actually call out code when we send out letters for enforcement. So
Are
something
you going to have like a recommendation or anything like
as
that?
part of
on
our
penalty?
policy, I think, unless we need, as part of that overall STR policy, unless
Okay.
we need something sooner, but so that should be a good aid in that. Land use code updates. We put out an RFQ in the hopes of getting just another consultant to help. The first consultant was an attorney more than a professional planner, I would say. Well, definitely. And so the final draft that the Planning Commission has been working through just has a lot of things that the Planning Commission doesn't feel are necessary or relevant to the town. It reads like a cut and paste from other communities that wasn't really refined at all. So so the Planning Commission is currently working through that document as a group, crossing things out, making comments, really redlining it basically. The thought is to have, once that review is complete, then turn that over to someone to do kind of a final review. And one thought we had was I put together this request for quotes because our purchasing policy says that anything under $25,000, you don't have to do a full RFP process. You can do quotes. And so I put together an RFQ, sent it out to about 6 planning consultants that I found as part of the American Planning Association Colorado site. Talked to a couple briefly, but in the end, we received no responses. Our thought was we could have a planning professional kind of guide us to the finish line. We got the extension, which is now December 31st for the DOLA grant, which means that any reimbursement we receive from DOLA has to be paid out by us to be reimbursed before December 31st. After that date, we have 90 days to close it out, meaning in our plan was to basically have the review and everything done, have a final draft, spent all the money by December 31st, and then have that 90 days to basically go through the public hearing process and to hopefully have an adopted code. Some of that needs to be rethought a little bit. But Thursday, we're having a meeting with the chair and co-chair of the Planning Commission, myself, Becky, and staff from our town attorney office. They have a land use specialist on staff there. So at this point, probably the most efficient thing to do would be to still work through it with Planning Commission, submit it to the land use attorney on staff already at the town attorney's office, and do the review that way. I did speak just today with a DOLA representative who's been helping us through the grant process and the latest extension that we requested. She definitely was not that receptive to the idea of another extension. And so basically recommended that we kind of go back to review the basics of why we applied for the grant initially. What are those core goals? Are we on track for that? There's been a lot of discussion about adding wildland urban interface language to the code. And she basically said, you can add things later, but she would recommend that we kind of keep it simple, go back to the basics of the grant origination, and just try to get a good solid platform for perhaps adding additional things in the future. So we have a lot of discussion to be had yet with this, and kind of reevaluating the timeline, what's realistic, and how much money we actually have to get this done. And at the least we can have a modernized version of our code that could be built upon perhaps in the future. So lots to think about there. I calculated some statistics in our GIS layers so that we can be better informed in terms of minimum lot sizes and things like that. So we can go through and talk about some of the concrete thresholds that need to be discussed as part of this rewrite. So lots going on there, and welcome any questions.
Trustees, any questions, comments? Okay, thanks, Nate. Moving on to our final item, correspondence.
This is just something I threw in from Nancy. I probably haven't done it before, but it's kind of a good correspondence regarding the Trail Ambassadors program.
Yeah, I think in June they counted 700 And this is just something where they're only on duty. Basically, like they're saying Saturday from 8 to 10 and 10 to noon, and then Sunday the same. And they don't always have people manning every shift. And so that number is probably very conservative.
Yeah, the town the last 2 weekends has been full all weekend.
Yeah.
So we're getting a lot of traffic looks like mostly hikers.
Yep. And, the addition of that Welcome Center board has really been a great help. We'll drive by and we'll see people, even though there's not a trail ambassador on duty, we'll see people looking at that board. So that was a really good idea. Whoever came up with it. I think I know who. So if there's any final questions, comments from board, if not, it is 7:56 and we are adjourned.
We skipped. Sorry, Marshall.
Thank you, Marshall.